So artificial intelligence is transforming the global tech landscape as the US and China battles for supremacy, while a new breed of lean, innovative startups challenge old funding norms. Investors are rethinking valuations, and global corporations race to turn AI breakthroughs into real-world profits. Europe is setting the standards on safety regulation, while open source platforms and agentic AI accelerate the next wave. How close are we to artificial superintelligence, and in what way do we truly want it? So here comes our first panel discussions powered by Silicon Dragon. And now without any further ado, I would like to invite our panel chair to come up on stage. Let's welcome Ms. Rebecca Fannin, founder of Silicon Dragon Venture. Let's welcome Rebecca. And moving on, I would also like to invite the panelists of this session, including Mr. Nicolas du Cray, partner of Cathay Innovations, Mr. David Chen, operating partner, Hongshan CBC Cross-Border Digital Fund, Ms. Helen Wong, managing partner, ACV Capital, and last but not least, Mr. Farid Haque, venture partner, AQVC. Should we give a big round of applause for our speakers? And now, without any further ado, I'm going to pass over the stage to Rebecca. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. How are you? Still awake? Still attentive? Glued to your smartphone? I hope not. Today we're in this world of AI, and we're in a world where there are two leaders competing. That's China and the US. And the US has the advantage in terms of investment, but China is catching up very quickly in applications, in research, in patents, in robotics, the applications of AI in robotics, and EVs and AVs. So we're going to dive into all of these topics today with our experts. I know everyone wants to know, how long is this AI bubble going to last? What is the future? What is the future of leadership of AI? When will the bubble burst? How is this different from the internet bubble? And let's start with Farid, all the way at the end. Tell us, how long is this bubble going to last? So we're going to go through the panel very quickly, lightning round. How long is the AI bubble going to last?
All right, I think that depends on whether you think there is a bubble or not.
How many people think there is an AI bubble?
We got a couple of takers. So I only say that because I think in that previous iteration of what we thought was a bubble was about a lot of market speculation in public markets. And I think if you look at today, a lot of that movement is in private markets. So I think that's one really important point that I would make. Yeah. As, of course, there are companies that are in the AI space and they're trading publicly. But if you think about how long companies are staying private now and how much of that movement is happening, much of that movement is being by what we deem to be slightly more sophisticated investors. So I would suggest that actually maybe it isn't as big a bubble as people are making it out to be. Although Michael Burry is, of course, starting to short things already, so there's a lot of speculation now about that.
Okay, good. Helen, your view.
I would say that it does feel bubbly because in terms of valuations, if you see angel round, companies can raise 100 million or even 1 billion in Silicon Valley. You cannot say that's not bubbly, right? At the same time, I think it's different from maybe the dot-com bubble because at the dot-com bubble, you had no revenues, whereas a lot of startups in the Gen AI space, they have revenues, and the revenues are actually accelerating. So I think in that sense, there could be a continued value creation. I wouldn't say valuations aside, right? So that is how I see it at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. David?
I think sometimes bubble, if it's healthy, it's good for the ecosystem. I mean, just like beer, right? Certain level of the bubble is good.
The more bubbles, the better.
And then I think this time the phenomena is very different from previous SaaS phenomenon because the product market fit, especially at the application layer, the product market fit validation is very fast. If you look at the company like Lovable, right? in a matter of just 8 months, they reach $100 million ARR, right? So 100 million become the new benchmark, basically, for a startup company. So I think it's justified, the higher valuation justifying this hyper growth, right?
Okay, well, interesting. Okay, next.
So we're building the infrastructure for basically the next industrial revolution. So like all infrastructure, you know, there's always a lot of excitement at the beginning, and a lot of people want to join that stage of development. But that can lead to overcapacity, that can lead to eventually investor losing money. I think as a whole, AI will have a huge impact on industries, and that infrastructure will be used, but maybe a lot of the value creation will accrue to the users of that infrastructure rather than the infrastructure companies themselves. The picks and shovel providers like NVIDIA obviously will benefit a lot. And certainly all of the startup ecosystem will benefit a lot from this infrastructure. But there may be more questions about the infrastructure layer, which would be the hyperscalers.
Okay, sure. A lot of Silicon Valley was shocked when DeepSeek came along. They probably should not have been shocked if they were following the Chinese tech trends and the innovation trends. But DeepSeek did shock Silicon Valley. And I want to know, are we going to see another DeepSeek from China or from somewhere else in the world, such as Europe or Southeast Asia? Helen, since you're here from Singapore, why don't you share your view about, is there going to be another DeepSeek? And you also have a deep China experience as well. So do you think there's going to be another DeepSeek? And when do you think that might happen? Or was that just a once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing, a once-in-a-cycle kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that what shocked the world about DeepSeek was that, you know, it came out when everybody was expecting that China would be constrained by the, you know, H100 GPUs that China would have very limited access to, given geopolitics. But actually, you know, as Mr. Tai spoke about before, the innovation is more, you know, as a product of necessity because of that, and also they focus more on the inference side, right, rather than the, you know, the pre-training. So I think that would that be another DeepSeek moment? Hard to say. I guess some innovation could still come about, but I do also think that maybe some of the constraint now is getting to be like the data amount that is available out there. It could also be like for China, especially the, you know, the Huawei chips, right? Are they going to be very comparable to what is coming from the NVIDIAs of the world? Looks like they are more focused on the inference again, and whether there will be a breakthrough. I think everybody's hoping that there will be. So that's how I can say for now. That is the status of the innovation.
Right. I think part of the shock from Silicon Valley side was that, hey, we overpaid. DeepSeek showed us that this could be done efficiently.
I think it's not really apples to apples, right? Because the LLMs that have been, you know, developed in the West based on this pre-trained data is more on the training side and not DeepSeek on the inference side. So I think that is one distinction. But of course, you know, they're leveraging these LLM models, like Mr. Tai had mentioned, that getting all the data from ChatGPT. So I think that is also kind of where we see probably the innovation going towards the end, right? Because towards the downstream, towards the apps. Because on the LLM side, you can just see that the big LLMs are already there, and they are just going to just improve on each version. And then who's like ahead of, you know, the other? It just varies by every version, right? One version somebody could leapfrog, and then another version somebody could, you know, get over the other. So I think that part is kind of. I think the competitive landscape is kind of determined among these few, but it's every version there will be like, you know, who's the ranking may be changing again.
Farid from Europe, you're here from the UK.
Yes. I just want to say that I think, especially from a European perspective, there's a bit of a false economy around this whole, is it cheaper? Because I want to just shine a light on this one very big problem, which is the hidden cost of training data. A lot of people have gone and sort of done the let's train on data and let's just put our heads on the ground and just pretend like this data was free. The data is not free. You have to pay to license it. And those that have gone and actually trained on data that is not licensed are now being sued. And you can see that. Look at a lot of the multimodal, sort of, especially the image generation stuff, Midjourney is being sued. A lot of other people are being sued because they haven't paid for that data. They've trained on publishers' data without paying for it.
Speaking of which, I have some personal experience to share with that I found out that 2 of my books are training Anthropic.
Wow.
And so there's a lawsuit settlement, and several authors, such as myself, are due money.
There you go. Class action, here we come.
Yeah, so that was kind of a surprise. But, the other thing I want to share, too, is that it's a very circular information generator. It feeds on itself. So if you think you can trust it, just realize how much it does feed on itself. So I just want to share one other personal experience. I wanted to verify a piece of some data. So I went on ChatGPT. I'd already tried to find out the original source. So I thought, let me ask ChatGPT what it thinks is the original source. ChatGPT came back and said, I am the source. ChatGPT. And at that point, I realized, okay, you can't trust anything. It was like the Wizard of Oz speaking. So anyhow, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to share those 2 experiences.
Not at all. Look, I think the rest of the panel may have lots more to share on this, but I just want to close on saying that I think Europe is clearly trying to innovate. There's many regions. Everyone's trying to do something. The question is just, India is not out of the running. Everybody, the UAE, the GCC has emerged as a new center of a sort of innovation. But yeah. I think it's just not this obsession around cost needs to go away because we need to be able to pay for fair use of data.
Yeah, good point.
Rebecca,
David.
I can also share my personal experience. Yeah, because I think innovation can come from anywhere. Even before about 8-9 months before the DeepSeek moment, I'm sitting on the board of the GitLab JV in China. It's a joint venture with Hongshan and GitLab. GitLab is a public listed company in the US. So the chairman and founder of GitLab, Sid, he talked to us because we are brainstorming about how we're going to do the AI coding, right? GitLab used to be a traditional DevOps company for developers. And then he pointed out that there's a company called DeepSeek you need to pay attention to. Okay, I said, where's the company? Is it in Silicon Valley? He said, no, it's in Hangzhou.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, for inner circle of the people paying attention, studying AIs, they know DeepSeek way before the DeepSeek moment.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So, DeepSeek was born from the fact that China is operating AI under deep constraints, or access to chips and things like that. Yeah. But actually, AI is very important for future economic growth. Demographic challenge in China makes it hard actually to maintain economic growth, and the government really sees AI as a way to continue growing at 4 to 5% a year. But all of this is actually under the constraints of limited access to hardware, for example. But on the other hand, the government is really putting together all the resources necessary to develop next AI champions. And that includes access to cheap electricity, all the infrastructure that is being built in data center, access to massive amounts of data that China is generated daily and across all industries. So all of this data is made available to startups and innovators to actually develop the next algorithms. So that's really a very good recipe for the next invention in AI. I wish it could come from Europe and Southeast Asia, but honestly, I'm not sure. It's most likely to come from China or the US.
So as AI continues to expand and exert its influence around the world, do you think that we're going to see separate spheres of influence of AI? Are we going to see sovereign AI by country, by region? Is this a good thing or a bad thing? So
sovereign AI has to happen for industries. especially those industries who have data that are industrial secrets. So then they can only put that on the Mistral of the world, for example, right? So, but for more general tasks, obviously, we can still use ChatGPT or DeepSeek or something else. And by the way, DeepSeek is used all over the world, right, as an open source. 80% of startups in the US are reportedly using DeepSeek. It was Andreessen Horowitz who mentioned that figure. But sovereign AI has to happen for specific industries for proprietary data. There's going to be a locally built infrastructure for that specifically, but the more generic tasks can be done on any kind of LLMs.
Right. Sovereign AI, any other comments?
Okay, I do have some comments. I'm also sitting on a board of a public listed data center company called 21 VNet. So my perspective is, I think for the US and China, I think for national security, definitely they need to control the full stack, right? So these are the two superpowers in the whole world. But they're also going to collaborate if there's no security issues. For example, I mean, a lot of US startups these days, they are using Chinese open source softwares, right? Because it can lower the cost. And then China also sometimes use NVIDIA chips, right? I mean, definitely also building their own GPUs.
Right.
And then I think for the rest of the world, they are betting on both systems. I think, I don't want to call, I know one of the country in Middle East, they have one company follow the US technology stack. There's another company, actually, they hire a French CEO and then use the Huawei systems and also DeepSeek. I think they betting on both. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to see how DeepSeek, is used a lot in the U.S. too, and people are not afraid of it.
Oh yeah. So
yeah. Okay.
They are start running model as services. Many of them they are running on the open source.
Yeah, open source has been a huge advantage, and China has helped to accelerate open source. Okay, Farid?
Yeah, I think there's just two things I want to flag for sovereign AI. One is sort of the scale of ambition for countries. So, and I was born in the UAE, so I keep talking about that as an example. I'm proud of what they've achieved. But if you think about their plan, the UAE's plan right now is to spend about $100 billion, right, in AI for sovereign AI. That's really outsized for a country that size. Think about that for a second. Compare that to the UK, which is just spending a couple of $1 billion. It's almost embarrassing right now, right? And I'm here from the UK, so I think I can say that. But again, it's also about who are you partnering with to achieve that stack? The US has a strategy where they're going full stack, right? They want to own the whole thing, and then they want to export that stack to various countries so that it can be implemented. But the advantage that other Asian countries have is that they can mix and match, right? They can decide, okay, I'm going to take this part of the stack from the US and this part of the stack from China. But I think that if China is going to play a smart game, look at what the Sajwanis, the Damak owners have done from the UAE. They were standing up with President Trump saying, we're going to invest $20 billion in data centers in the US. Well, why isn't Sajwani here saying the same thing? So I think there needs to be a little bit of this courting moment where, countries need to go and court the best people to invest in their sovereign AI movements as well, so that private sector can also contribute to that in their countries.
And what I found very interesting is actually the UAE is offering to host sovereign AI data centers.
Exactly.
So in UAE, but it actually belongs to the country that's the client. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So with the U.S.-China tech race and the conflicts that have arisen out of that, and we have seen the blocks from the U.S. Investment into Chinese AI. So where does this leave the U.S.? If we're not investing in the second largest player in the world in AI, then does this put the U.S. at a disadvantage?
Well, actually, to that point, it's very interesting. I read this kind of joke on WeChat, saying that our Chinese engineers are better than your Chinese engineers, meaning the Chinese engineers in Silicon Valley are better than the Chinese engineers in China. I don't take sides. I'm from Singapore. But I just think that, at the end of the day, a lot of it has to go with talent, right? And talent If you look at AI 1.0, a lot of it was in the US and a lot of it was in China. So it is unfortunate, but I think the rest of the world might have a shortage of AI engineers. But there is mobility of Chinese engineers, relative mobility. They can always go to Silicon Valley. They can always go to Singapore as a mid-stop maybe. So I think that, it's really about the flow of talent. But the startups, probably would be from these two countries that would capture maybe the majority of the value creation.
Right. And the tech cluster effect is huge, right?
I just want to flag that, how many of you know what Hugging Face is? Can I just see a show of hands? Okay, so Hugging Face is basically the site that you can go to get open source models, right? And I think if you look at the number of Chinese models, especially Quen, right, which is an Alibaba model that are being used or downloaded from Hugging Face, that I think 7 of the top 10 are Chinese. So while everyone thinks that we're not using Chinese technology or not investing in that, actually they are. They're just using open source models or they're using lots of different technology. So I think they are, to your point, I don't think anyone's being left behind, right? People are just finding clever ways. In Hindi, there's a wonderful word called jugaad, which is cheap innovation, right? Frugal innovation. I think people, engineers, are figuring out jugaad around ways around this whole problem.
Yeah, but I think also on the investor front, I think on the usage front, yes, but on the investor front, there is more complexity, right? Because there is CFIUS, right? And then there's reverse CFIUS. So US investors investing in China is no right now. And then Chinese investors going to invest in US startups is also no, especially for the ones that have more core technology, right? And I've heard people say, they come to Singapore, Chinese founders, and they try to be a global company, and then they go to Silicon Valley. They find that they can still get turned away from like top tier VCs from the US because they're just so afraid of not being on the right side of politics. Sure. So a lot of Chinese founders, from what we hear, want to change the nationality, which is a pretty big step, but they are willing to do anything, right, for the startup.
Yeah, you've seen some Chinese startups move to Singapore, right?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, Manus is one for, maybe some people say they shouldn't have been so high profile about their move to Singapore. But basically, they're very, they got funding from Benchmark, which a lot of people thought would be very hard to get, funding from a top tier VC, but they managed to do it, yeah.
That all gives more room to a European fund like ours, so we're actually quite happy about that. Less competition.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because as a Chinese American, I also feel a lot of restrictions, right? Because the U.S. restriction exactly all apply to U.S. person means both for institutions and also for individuals. Yeah. So I personally I cannot do many things based on the existing regulations. But I think it's good for China side because a lot of Chinese VCs, right? They have both RMB fund. So for the RMB fund, they can deploy the capital to support the Chinese national policies.
Sure.
And they also have the U.S. dollars, right? I talked to one of the partner who's in charge of the enterprise AI. She told me that 70% of the portfolio company they incorporate in Singapore, 20% are incorporate in the US if they have the US identity, right? So they are going abroad. They have no restriction to deploy the capital basically to support the US AI industry. So I think from that end, I think Chinese government is more open-minded.
Okay, well, let's look at commercialization of AI. Who's making money from it? Does China have an advantage because, electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles and robotics and advanced manufacturing, AI feeds into all of that. So let's talk a little bit about commercialization of AI. Who's got the lead? What is the future? Who wants to tackle that?
So, actually, I don't have the answer to your question, but we're gonna certainly the whole ecosystem is gonna have to generate massive amounts of revenue to justify the infrastructure build, right? So we are seeing 2030 we want to build at least 100 gigawatts of data center, $40 billion per gigawatt. So that's I think something like $8 trillion of revenue that needs to be created by 2030 to justify this capex.
So does it mean that non-profit is the way to go in AI?
It's unlikely, right? I mean, it's gonna have to be. Nobody's doing that for philanthropic reasons, right? So
Okay.
we'll see.
All right. Anyone else?
Yeah, actually, been talking to some like China VCs, and a lot of people say that overseas markets are the way to go because for every like dollar that you can make in China, you can make maybe $6-7 in overseas, right? Especially the developed markets, and this applies especially for to-B companies like SaaS type business models. You will find that in the West they are more used to paying for that, and in China I think it's still a lot of customization, right? So that is the main difference in terms of monetization. If you look at the, I think, revenue ranking, there's still a lot of U.S. companies that are high up in the rankings.
I think I'd only add that I was recently watching this interview where Satya Nadella was talking about the fact that they have GPUs just sitting in inventory, right, that they cannot use. So it seems like the only constraint in the Western markets right now is their lack of compute. So they say that I think the quote was, if you give me 10x more compute, I can probably deliver close to 10x more revenue. That's an incredible fact, right? That's mind-blowing. So it just seems like we need to catch up on that side and actually unleash more economic value that's coming out of the technologies that we've developed. And that's going to take time, primarily because the inputs are, as we were saying, energy, infrastructure. This is not stuff that you can just snap your finger and
It's
have.
very expensive.
It's super expensive.
So it's a tech titan game versus startups?
Well, I did hear on CNBC somebody said, the best bet on AI at this point in time is probably in NVIDIA, right? And it's so obvious, but it's still the best bet because they are still capturing most of the dollars, right? But I mean, it's like every point in time in the cycle. If we look back at the .com, era, we all knew how Cisco and Nortels of the world, right? The infra, equipment guys were very, very popular and the stock was overvalued, and then after a while it just corrects, it moves to the next stage.
So we need to move right along on these safety issues, the safety and security issues with AI. There are a lot of issues involved with deep fakes and et cetera. So is this an area where the world can cooperate on having a global standard for AI safety or not? Or is that just like a dream?
My gut feeling is that the bad guys can always outsmart the regulation, but I think AI can be the answer to AI safety. So basically, using cyber security, using AI to actually go against the threat of AI, that may be the solution. I think people individually. I don't think people can do it. I don't think regulation can do it. They can put a framework in place, but I think technology can always outsmart it. So we need to use technology to fight technology.
Okay, good. Any last comments? Because we do need to wrap this up.
Just very quickly, I think you cannot do this without policy. But I mean, it's hard enough to get people to agree to what they want to eat for lunch. Forget, how to agree on AI safety standards. But Matt Clifford in the UK set up the very first ever AI safety summit, which was attended a while back, when Rishi Sunak was in power and so forth. But we haven't really moved along, and primarily that's because of a lack of willingness for the US to really participate in that. I would say on the opposite side, most of the world wants to come to some sort of standard agreement, but there's a missing player.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, I think Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, he used to be very hawkish towards China, right? But a few months ago, he went to Shanghai AI Summit, and he made a very good point. Basically, the world need to collaborate, especially between US and China, need to collaborate on the AI safety, right? Because a lot of AI is a dual purpose. One of the companies will go public very soon is AI drone company called Endurio, right? They have the company basically is an AI company, but they have different formation. They have this video surveillance to control the southern border of the US. They have the drones, etc. I think for those dual purpose AI technology, definitely we need certain level of international standard or regulations. That's what I think, yeah.
Okay, one can hope, right? All right, well, thank you everyone for listening. We do need to wrap things up now to catch up with the program timing. So thank you for listening, and we'll be around for any questions. Thank you again.